Welcome to True Echo, where real stories meet raw emotion, and every moment echoes a truth that can't be ignored. In today's story, injustice wears a polished smile, but dignity walks in quietly, and leaves with thunder. What started as a simple gift from a loving wife became a public reckoning that shook an entire luxury empire. This isn't just about watches or wealth. It's about worth. Stay with us. The morning sun spilled softly across Fifth Avenue, brushing the street with golden light as if blessing the day with quiet promise. Boutique windows gleamed like jewelry boxes, beckoning the rich and curious with velvet-trimmed fantasies of prestige. Among the pedestrians strolling this high-end corridor of Manhattan was Ava Johnson, a woman whose very presence defied assumption. At 45, Ava carried herself with quiet poise. Her white t-shirt, gray joggers, and clean sneakers might have seemed out of place in a world dripping with designer logos, but she wore them with a confidence that came not from labels, but from life. Her wedding band, simple and gold, gleamed subtly on her hand. She didn't need sparkle to announce her worth. She paused in front of Valmont Timepieces, a boutique famed for exclusivity, elegance, and a subtle arrogance. Ava wasn't here to browse. She had one mission, to buy a rare vintage watch, a Chronomaster 1962, as a surprise birthday gift for her husband, Malik. There were only 5 in the world, and one sat inside Valmont, encased in glass and whispers of old money. Ava had already confirmed the piece's availability. She wanted it not just because it was rare, but because it had belonged to a pioneering black aviator, a man who had defied odds, like her husband, who built an empire with brilliance and backbone. She opened the boutique's glass door and stepped inside. The cool, conditioned air met her skin like a curtain, the scent of sandalwood and expensive cologne lacing the room. Staff floated between customers with smiles that felt like practiced choreography. No one greeted her. She moved toward the far case, where the watch waited under spotlights. Its silver face, aged to perfection, stared back like it had stories to tell. Ava smiled gently. This was it. She imagined Malik's reaction, his eyes lighting up with that boyish joy that still surprised her, even after 15 years of marriage. "May I help you?" a voice finally asked. Ava turned to see a young blonde woman in a sleek black uniform. Her name tag read Emily, but it was the tightness in her smile that Ava noticed first. Emily's eyes scanned her like a barcode, lingering on the sneakers, the lack of jewelry, the minimal makeup. "Yes," Ava said calmly. "I'd like to see that watch, please." Emily's tone tensed, even as her words remained polite. "That's a Chronomaster 1962. One of our most exclusive pieces. It's priced at $95,000. "I know," Ava replied. "That's the one I came for." Emily blinked, surprised. Then, as if talking to a child reaching for fine china, she said, "Perhaps you'd like to explore our women's collection in the back. Beautiful pieces. More attainable." Ava met her gaze without blinking. "No, thank you. I came for this one." Emily hesitated, then retrieved the small silver key from her pocket and unlocked the case with exaggerated care. She lifted the watch and set it on the counter, inches from Ava but worlds apart in tone. "This is extremely limited," she added. "Only 5 were made. It's not something we usually take out for browsing." "I'm not browsing," Ava said, picking up the watch gently. "I'll take it." Emily let out a short breath that bordered on a laugh. "Perhaps you'd like to explore financing options." "That won't be necessary." From across the room, a tall man with slick back hair and a navy suit moved closer. Richard Caldwell, general manager of Valmont, was known for his eye for real clients, and from his perspective, Ava was pretending. He approached the counter, his smile thin and fake. "Is everything all right here, Emily?" "She's interested in the Chronomaster," Emily said, emphasizing interested like it was a stretch. "I see," Richard replied smoothly. "Madam, for high-value items, we require verification, platinum card, wire clearance." I'm sure you understand. We've had issues before. People using merchandise for pictures, wasting time. Ava's face remained steady. I understand policies. But I also know when I'm being profiled. I came to make a purchase. My husband will be here soon. I'd like to complete this before he arrives. It's a surprise. Richard and Emily exchanged a look, amused, dismissive. Of course, Richard said. Perhaps we can revisit when he arrives. Ava knew the implication. She wasn't enough on her own. And that stung more than she expected. She looked around. Customers nearby were pretending not to watch but clearly listening. She checked her watch. 11:30, Malik would be here in 30 minutes. I'm not here to prove anything, she said. I came to make a purchase. That's all. Richard's smile vanished. And yet, you haven't. So, until you can demonstrate the ability to complete this transaction, I'll have to ask you to step aside. Just like that, a moment of love had turned into a public humiliation. She was no longer a customer. She was a problem. Ava didn't move. Her hand hovered just above the velvet pad where the Chronomaster 1962 lay like a prize in a rigged game. Around her, the air grew colder, not from the boutique's AC, but from the shift in energy. A tension, a challenge. The sort she had faced too many times in too many polished rooms. I'm not stepping aside, she said evenly. And I'm not waiting for my husband to validate my presence here. Emily gave a barely concealed scoff. I've worked here 5 years, she said, just loud enough for Ava to hear. I can spot a discount hunter a mile away. You're wasting everyone's time. The words were barbed, designed to wound under the cover of indifference. Ava didn't flinch, but her spine stiffened. The jab wasn't new. It wasn't even clever. But it cut just the same, not because of what it was, but because of how casually it was delivered. How sure Emily was that she was right. Richard stepped closer, trying to wrap things up with finality. Madam, he said, tone low but laced with smug authority, I believe we've been more than patient. But you have no verification, no credentials, just a claim and an attitude. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. We've had too many situations like this. People coming in to look rich. Touching things they can't afford. Disrupting our environment. Ava stared at him, eyes unblinking. So you're asking me to leave, she said, her voice quieter now, dead calm, because I don't look like your idea of a customer? Richard's lips twitched in something close to a smirk. I'm asking you to stop wasting our time, and step outside. If your husband wishes to return and make a purchase, we'll be happy to assist him. He gestured toward the exit like a maitre d' excusing a disruptive guest. The verdict was clear. The assumptions unchallenged. The dignity stripped. Ava didn't shout. Didn't cry. She gathered her breath and her pride, and walked to the door. But before she stepped out, Richard muttered just loud enough for her to catch. People like you don't belong here. He placed a hand lightly on her arm to nudge her out. Not violent, but deliberate. A dismissal sealed with physical finality. Outside, the brightness of Fifth Avenue hit her like a wall. The warmth of the city, the bustle of shoppers, the traffic, all of it felt distant. Behind the glass door, she could still see Richard and Emily chuckling. She didn't need to hear the joke to know who the punchline was. She checked her watch. 11:40, Malik would arrive in 20 minutes. For a moment, she just stood there. This wasn't the first time her worth had been questioned because of how she looked. But this time, the insult hit deeper. Because she hadn't come into that store as a billionaire's wife. She had come in as herself. And they decided that wasn't enough. A woman approached quietly. Mid-50s, white, polished. She held a small Valmont shopping bag, clearly just leaving the boutique. I saw what happened, the woman said gently. I just wanted to say. I'm so sorry. That was appalling. Ava turned, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. Thank you, she said softly. I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if I didn't say something, the woman continued. You were treated like you didn't belong. And you handled it with such grace. More than I would have. Ava offered a tired smile. I've had practice. The woman looked back at the boutique. I hope someone holds them accountable. Ava gave no response. Part of her wanted to walk away. Let the fire cool. But another part, the part that had walked into that boutique on her own, with her own money and her own purpose, knew better. Thank you again, she said. The woman squeezed her arm gently, then disappeared into the crowd. Ava exhaled and turned, walking slowly down the street. Not far. Just far enough to clear her head. She didn't want to give Richard the satisfaction of seeing her loitering outside like someone unsure of where else to go. She checked her watch again. 11:45. 15 minutes. The story wasn't over yet. At exactly 11:59 a.m., a sleek black Bentley glided to a stop outside Valmont Timepieces. The luxury car was understated yet unmistakable, a silent signal to those who knew how to read wealth. The driver, dressed in a crisp uniform, stepped out swiftly and opened the rear passenger door. Malik Johnson emerged. Tall, composed, and dressed in a tailored navy suit that framed his athletic build like armor, Malik had the aura of a man who didn't just own power, he commanded it. His shoes barely made a sound as he stepped onto the sidewalk, but the air around him seemed to shift. Conversations paused. Pedestrians glanced. Even the wind seemed to ease its pace. He didn't smile. He didn't rush. But his dark eyes moved with purpose, scanning the block with precision. Then he saw her. Ava, walking back up the street, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. To anyone else, she might have looked calm. But Malik had been married to her for 15 years. He was fluent in her silences. He saw the stiffness in her shoulders, the tension in her jaw, the way her arms were crossed tighter than normal. Something had happened. Ava reached him. Before she could say a word, he gently took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. I was just taking a walk, she said softly. A woman recognized me, Malik said. Said she saw you being asked to leave the store. Ava gave a small nod, her voice barely above a whisper. It's nothing. Just the usual. No, Malik said, calm but firm. It's not nothing. His voice didn't rise, but there was fire beneath the surface. The kind of heat that made investors panic and entire boards fall silent. Ava could feel it building in him, not the fury of a man wronged, but the sharp, deliberate wrath of a man who understood that principle mattered more than price tags. Before she could protest, Malik turned and strode toward the boutique's door. Ava followed behind, not to stop him, but to witness what came next. Inside Valmont, Richard Caldwell stood surrounded by staff, still recounting the "discount hunter" story with smug amusement. Emily laughed beside him, arms folded. A few employees nearby chuckled uncomfortably, unsure whether to enjoy the joke or escape it. The chime above the boutique door rang out like a warning bell. Malik entered. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Conversations halted. Staff turned. Even customers sensed something had arrived that demanded their attention. Richard turned, plastering on a fake smile. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Valmont. How may we assist you today? Malik's gaze scanned the room before landing directly on Richard. I believe, he said, each word clear and cold, you just escorted my wife out of this store. Richard's smile died mid-syllable. Emily froze. One of the associates near the register dropped a pen. Behind Malik, Ava stepped in silently, no longer invisible, no longer ignorable. Recognition dawned too slowly across Richard's face. Ava Johnson wasn't just another casually dressed woman. She was the wife of Malik Johnson, the billionaire whose name sent ripples through markets and corporate boardrooms. The man whose firm, unbeknownst to Richard until this very moment, held controlling interest in Valmont's parent company. "Mr. Johnson," Richard stammered, his voice cracking. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Has there?" Malik asked, his voice razor-sharp. "From what I understand, my wife was judged, dismissed, humiliated, and physically guided out of this store, all while attempting to purchase one of your most exclusive items. Is that correct?" Richard opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Emily looked at the floor, red creeping up her neck. "You didn't know who she was," Malik continued. "And that's the problem. Because it shouldn't matter." He turned slightly, gesturing to Ava. "Was this the watch you were trying to buy?" Ava nodded, pointing to the Chronomaster 1962, still sitting, untouched, on the velvet pad. Malik smiled at her, just briefly, before turning back to Richard. "I'd like to speak to the owner of this establishment." "Mr. Goldstein is in Europe, sir," Richard replied quickly, sweat now visible on his brow. "But I am the general manager. I have full authority." "Good," Malik cut in. "Then you'll be the one explaining why this store is about to face a very public relations disaster. And why its most exclusive merchandise will be pulled from our luxury partnerships indefinitely." Richard looked like the ground had vanished beneath him. "Sir, please, we had no idea." "You didn't need to know," Malik snapped. "That's the entire point." He pulled a sleek business card from his jacket and placed it on the glass counter with slow precision. "My office will be in touch regarding your employment status." "Wait, my employment?" Richard croaked. "I should have mentioned," Malik added, almost casually. "My firm finalized acquisition of controlling shares in the Valmont Group, this morning. Technically, I'm your boss." The room went silent. Emily turned pale. A customer near the entrance gasped. Another pulled out her phone, whispering into it as she discreetly started recording. This moment wouldn't stay private for long. But Malik wasn't done. "I'm not here to fire anyone," he said. "That would be too easy. What I am here to do is implement change." He turned to Ava. "My wife has agreed to oversee a new initiative, comprehensive training in racial bias awareness and equitable customer service. Every employee will attend. Including you," he said, locking eyes with Richard. Ava blinked. She hadn't agreed to anything yet. But the fire in Malik's voice made her understand, this wasn't about vengeance. This was about legacy. About transformation. "And if you're unwilling to learn," Malik added, voice icy, "you're welcome to resign. Today." Richard's face crumbled. I would appreciate the opportunity to learn, sir." "Excellent," Malik said, turning away. "Now, if you'll kindly complete the transaction. My wife came here for an hour ago, we have a lunch reservation to get to." Richard moved with shaking hands, processing the purchase, now deferential. Now careful. Now terrified. He wrapped the vintage watch in premium packaging, sealing it with the gold Valmont emblem like a fragile truce. Ava and Malik turned, stepping back into the light of Fifth Avenue. Heads turned. Phones went up. Whispers spread like fire. And behind the boutique's glass, silence ruled. The world outside Valmont timepieces had changed. Or maybe it hadn't, and Ava just saw it more clearly now. The city kept moving, cabs honked, high heels clicked along the pavement, camera phones caught her and Malik mid-stride as they stepped into sunlight. But something in the air was heavier. Electric. As though the quiet war that had just taken place inside those boutique walls was now vibrating through the sidewalks of Fifth Avenue. Malik held her hand as they walked, never possessive, just connected. People stared. Some recognized him immediately. A few whispered her name. Not everyone knew her face. But they would now. As they reached the corner and waited for the light to change, Ava glanced back one last time. Through the glass doors of Valmont, the boutique looked the same. Gleaming, serene, perfect. But she knew what really lived inside now. And more importantly, so did they. What you did in there, she said softly, still staring at the boutique. That wasn't just about me, was it? No, Malik answered, without hesitation. It was about everyone like you. Everyone like us. Who walks into a room and gets measured by the wrong scale. She turned to look at him. He wasn't smiling. His jaw was still tight. But his grip on her hand had softened. A moment later, their driver pulled up again and held the door. They slid into the back seat, the city cocooning them in its usual, chaotic rhythm. Malik handed her the box with the chronomaster. Open it, he said. Ava unwrapped it carefully. The watch gleamed inside, nestled like a crown on royal blue velvet. She lifted it gently, turned it in her hand, then stopped. There was something she hadn't noticed before. A tiny engraving on the inside band. J.D. Carter, fly above. Her eyes widened. This was his, she murmured. James Carter. The pilot. Malik nodded. I did some digging after you mentioned it. The original owner. He was one of the first black commercial aviators licensed in the U.S. She stared at the inscription again, then looked up at Malik. You knew all this? I knew it would matter to you. And that's why it matters to me. They sat quietly for a few blocks, the soft hum of the city outside a soundtrack to their thoughts. Ava broke the silence first. You know they're going to spin it, right? The store. The media. Try to make it look like you used your power to intimidate them. That it was some kind of revenge stunt. Malik shrugged slightly. Let them. People who think that are the same people who think what happened to you was okay. But I didn't ask for attention. I know, he said. But sometimes the spotlight finds you anyway. They arrived at the restaurant, a private rooftop garden in Midtown where the maitre d' led them to a secluded table with sweeping views of the skyline. The server brought out sparkling water and a bottle of vintage Syrah, on the house, of course. But even in that perfect setting, Ava's mind lingered on something deeper. Do you think it changed anything? She asked. What happened today? Do you think it really did anything? Malik leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. You tell me. She thought for a moment. Well, she said slowly, I've been treated like I don't belong before. But this time, I stayed. I didn't shrink. I didn't prove anything. I just stood. And then you came, not to rescue me, but to stand with me. And, he asked. Anne. I think that's enough. For today. Malik smiled. You sure you don't want to go back and fire them both on the spot? Ava laughed, truly laughed, for the first time that day. It cut through the haze in her chest like sunlight. You really would've, wouldn't you? I would've bought the building just to turn it into a soup kitchen and made Richard wear a hairnet. She grinned, shaking her head. I love you. He reached across the table and took her hand again. I love you more. But just as the tension began to melt, Malik's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, and sighed. It's already online. Ava blinked. What is? He turned the screen to her. A video. The title blazed across the thumbnail. Woman kicked out of watch store, then her billionaire husband walked in. And underneath it, the views were climbing by the second. Ava stared at the phone screen, watching the numbers climb, 50,000. 53,000. 57,000 views. It had only been online for minutes. The thumbnail showed a blurry image of her stepping out of the boutique, followed by Malik walking in, his expression unreadable but commanding. The title alone was enough to spark outrage. But the video? It spoke for itself. Someone inside the boutique, likely a customer, had filmed the entire confrontation. Richard's condescension. Emily's scorn. Malik's entrance. His declaration, "You didn't need to know who she was." That's the problem. It was all there. Ava handed the phone back to Malik, her thoughts racing. "I didn't ask for this," she said quietly. "I know," Malik replied. "But maybe it's what people needed to see." Across the table, their server approached, nervous. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson." They both looked up. I just wanted to say I saw the video. I'm really sorry for what happened. If there's anything you need today, it's on us." Ava gave a small, graceful nod. "Thank you." The man retreated quickly, clearly afraid of saying the wrong thing. Ava turned back to Malik. "This isn't going to stay just a story, is it? It's going to become something else." "It already is," Malik said. He refreshed the page. Over 110,000 views now. The comment section was exploding. "She handled that with more grace than I ever could. The quiet power this couple showed is unreal. This is why representation matters. This is why we speak up." But then there were the others. Why not just show a credit card? This is what happens when you dress like a jogger at a gala. You can't expect special treatment just because your husband is rich. Ava closed her eyes for a moment. "They're still missing the point," she whispered. Malik reached for her hand again. "Let them. The ones who need to understand, will. And the ones who won't. They're not our audience." She opened her eyes again and looked at him, absorbing his calm. "What happens to Richard and Emily now?" "They get a choice," he said. "Learn, or leave." "I meant that. And if they learn? Then this was worth it." A pause. "And if they don't? Then at least we didn't let it slide." The wine arrived, poured delicately. Their entrees followed. Ava tried to eat, but her appetite was second to the thoughts racing through her mind. Not just about the store. But about all the times she had been made to feel small, invisible, second-guessing herself in boardrooms, ignored in meetings, passed over at galleries, followed in stores. The difference now wasn't the insult. It was the witness. The entire world had just seen it. And that, she realized, made it their problem too. After lunch, they walked slowly back to the car. Ava had taken the watch out of its box, fastening it gently around her wrist. It didn't just feel like a gift now. It felt like a badge. Malik opened the door for her. Before she stepped inside, she turned back to look at the skyline. A thought bloomed, quiet, but powerful. "I think I want to write about this," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "An op-ed?" "No," she said. "A story. The truth. Not just mine, but others like it. This happens every day. And people need to feel it. You always said you wanted to write again. I think I finally know what I want to say." The next morning, Ava sat at the wide oak desk in her sunlit home office, laptop open, coffee untouched. She hadn't written anything personal in over a decade, not since giving up freelance essays to help Malik build his company. But now the words were flooding back. Not because she wanted revenge. Not even because she wanted validation. She wanted truth. The kind that stuck in people's throats. The kind that made them uncomfortable enough to finally listen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, and then, without hesitation, she began. "I walked into a boutique yesterday to buy my husband a watch. I walked out reminded that money can open doors, but it can't always erase the locks people put on their hearts. They didn't see me. Not really. They saw my skin, my sneakers, my silence, and decided I wasn't worthy of the space I stood in. That my presence was suspicious, that my intentions couldn't possibly be legitimate. What they didn't know was that I had already made up my mind to purchase their most exclusive item. What they didn't expect was that I wouldn't shrink when they tried to dismiss me. And what they couldn't have imagined was that my husband, one of the most powerful men in this city, was about to walk in behind me. But the truth is, this isn't a story about a billionaire. This is a story about how easily dignity is denied. And how quickly assumptions become weapons. The article flowed in bursts of quiet fury and polished grace. Ava wrote until the sun shifted across the room. Until the silence felt full instead of empty. When she finally hit save, she didn't feel drained. She felt clear. She sent the piece to Malik. Within 10 minutes, he forwarded it to a high-profile editor he knew at The Atlantic. By noon, they called. They wanted to publish it that week. And they wanted her voice, raw, unfiltered, unedited. "Are you sure?" the editor asked her directly on the phone. "This will draw attention. You'll get praise. But also pushback. A lot of it." "I'm sure," Ava said. "I've spent too long being silent. I'm not afraid of noise anymore." That afternoon, Ava received a call from someone unexpected, Samantha Goldstein, the daughter of Valmont's founder. Young, sharp, and the incoming CEO. She had seen the viral video. She had read the draft of Ava's article through corporate legal channels. And she wanted to talk. Face to face. Ava agreed. The following day, they met in a private conference room in Midtown. Samantha, polished in a cream suit, began with an apology. "A formal one's coming," she said. "From the company. But this one is from me." Ava listened quietly. "I saw the footage," Samantha continued. "And I realized we don't just need bias training. We need a cultural reckoning inside our brand. And frankly, you shouldn't just oversee training. You should help lead it." Ava blinked. "Excuse me. I want to offer you a role. Consultant, speaker, whatever you're comfortable with. Help us rebuild this brand from the inside out. Help us teach what we clearly don't understand." Ava sat still, absorbing it. She hadn't expected an apology, let alone an offer. But part of her, the part that was still burning, didn't want to walk away from this with a simple article and a viral video. She wanted to build something. "I'll think about it," she said. "But if I do this, it won't be just a diversity box to check." "It won't be," Samantha said. "Not if I want to keep my job." Ava smiled faintly. "Then maybe we're finally speaking the same language." 3 weeks later, Ava Johnson stood in front of a room full of Valmont employees. They weren't just staff anymore, they were students. And she wasn't just a guest speaker. She was now the head of a brand new initiative titled Human First, Bias, Belonging, and Business. Created in partnership with Malik's firm and Valmont's new leadership, the program was about more than customer service. It was about consciousness. Behind her, projected on the screen, was a still from the viral video, the moment she had been escorted out of the boutique, frozen in time. But beside it, another image, her and Malik walking back in. Head high. Watch in hand. Unbothered, but never unchanged. "This," Ava began, gesturing to both photos, "is what assumptions look like, and what truth looks like walking back through the door." The room was silent. Not out of discomfort, but because they were listening. "I was taught to stay quiet when things like this happened," she continued. "To not make a scene. To smile and move on. But silence doesn't protect dignity. It buries it." She paused. No cue cards. No teleprompter. Just lived experience. "I didn't want to become a symbol. But I did want to become clear. If you learn one thing from what happened, let it be this: respect isn't earned by appearances. It's owed. The moment someone walks through your door, you owe them that. Regardless of what they wear. Or how they sound. Or what you think you know. She stepped away from the podium and let the silence hang. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest. Later that afternoon, as she and Malik walked out of the training center, hand in hand, Ava noticed a small crowd waiting on the sidewalk, strangers with signs, not in protest, but in support. "We see you. Thank you for standing. Change starts here." It was overwhelming. Humbling. But not uncomfortable. Not anymore. A reporter nearby called out, "Mrs. Johnson, do you think what happened to you will really change anything?" Ava paused, turned to look directly at her, then spoke not to the camera, but to everyone watching. "I don't expect a single story to change the world," she said. "But I know it can change someone's world. That's where it starts." Malik touched her shoulder gently. "We're not done yet," he whispered. "No," Ava replied, smiling softly. "We're just getting started." That night, as the sun set behind the skyline, Ava published one final update on her social media, accompanied by the photo of the watch on her wrist. The watch was never the point. It was what I walked in with, and what they refused to see. But now they do. And maybe tomorrow, someone else won't have to explain who they are, just to be seen. The post went viral within hours. The video? Now sitting at 23 million views. The boutique? Quietly undergoing a complete internal restructure. And Ava Johnson? Once an invisible customer, now a public voice. A speaker. A changemaker. And still, always, just a woman who wanted to buy a birthday gift for the man she loved. Only now, she'd given the world something much greater. At True Echo, we share the stories that demand to be heard, stories that challenge, inspire, and echo long after the screen fades. Ava Johnson didn't ask to become a symbol. She only asked to be treated with dignity. But in standing tall, she changed a company, and reminded us all that respect should never require proof. Let her story be a reminder, sometimes the smallest moments are where the biggest lessons live. If this story moved you, don't just scroll past. Subscribe to True Echo, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because silence may be comfortable, but truth creates change.